Thank you, Father, for emceeing all of our events. All of our events. He is truly amazing, and I see him navigate all of the walking around with no eyesight. And I heard somebody saying, how does he remember all this stuff? And because it's very simple. He has a 200 IQ. There's no substitute for intelligence. He has a photographic memory, and he can't see. It's literally amazing. I've been with Father for 22 years. That's not a coincidence. That's providence. And to serve him at the Magis Institute, and we collaborated to do the Napa Institute, and many other things that any place I ask him to be, he is. It's not easy for the guy that can't see to navigate his way across the continent to New York City and walk around in a place that he doesn't know and celebrate Mass. I'm just like in awe of that commitment. So let's give a round of applause for Father Spitzer. So Steph and I get to talk about this, I guess, because I founded Napa Institute, my grandchildren. So Steph and I have 9 grandchildren. It's the most incredible blessing. They all started after Napa Institute began. And our daughter and I have this affection for New York. So we have an apartment at Columbus Circle, and then we decided we moved to Hudson Yards, so we're in Hudson Yards. And my daughter started having children, and her first son was named Hudson. And I said, well, that's nice, sweetheart, but what's the baptismal name? So she prayed desperately to St. Giannamola, and he was born on the on the birthday of Giannamola, the daughter for whom St. Giannamola died delivering. And it was also Easter Sunday. I said, okay, well, why don't you have his baptismal name be Gianna? Okay, great. Then the second child was born, and her name was Brooklyn. And I said, well, yeah, I'm telling you, there you go, Father Sirico, from Brooklyn. And she's a feisty one, too, by the way. She is from Brooklyn. She's going to walk up and punch somebody in the face and drag them across this. She's only 1 year old, and I know this. So I said, well, honey, we got to have a baptismal name. Well, Mom's born on the feast of Our Lady Guadalupe. How about Guadalupe? Okay, that's good. Then the third child comes, and she says, I've got the name, and it's for a boy or a girl. And I said, well, what's the name? I'm thinking, boy or girl, Manhattan, I'm Midtown. I mean, this girl would name the kid anything, right? And she comes up with the name Lennox. I go, Lennox? Where's Lennox come from? Well, Steph does some research, and he donated the New York Public Libraries. He was worth $500 million when $500 million was a lot of money, okay? And he donated the public library. And then tonight, we're having cocktails in the Lennox ballroom, down at the inn. So I took a picture, sent it to my daughter, and said, I just changed the name of the ballroom. You're coming to New York today. And I said, okay, now what are you going to do for the middle name? Well, she slept next to a relic of Giannamola for the entire pregnancy, high-risk pregnancy. She has Lyme disease, for anybody that has Lyme disease. Tom Lerman's here, his wife does, and counseled my daughter through all of this. And she goes, well, what about Gianna? And can I have 2 kids with the same middle name? I go, yeah, we're going for it. So Gianna is the name. So Lennox Gianna Vath. So isn't that incredible? He's an incredible boy, almost died at 2 weeks old because of pneumonia. He's now 6 weeks old, and he's in amazing health. Thanks for all your prayers for those. I want to remind you, anybody that wants to go to Eastern Europe next year, we're going to Vienna, Prague, and Budapest. Please sign up. We're just finishing off the full registration. We have about 25 people. These are high-end, first-class trips. We have the new Mother Superior for the Dominican Sisters of Ann Arbor coming, and her vicar. And we've just got a good group. We got a pastor from Austin, and then a lot of you have already signed up. Steph and I will be there. And we begin in Rome with a special dinner for our Napa Institute attendees who are in Rome for that America Week, NAC dinners and Papal Foundation, all that. And Cardinal Pell was there this past year. Cardinal Harvey is our dear friend, and many of the other prelates from the Roman Curia. Early registration for the Summer Napa Institute expires November 1st. Make sure you book your rooms if you really want to stay on campus. Otherwise, we have the Westin Hotel, which is 2 miles away, that will be, you can save $100, and inflation, I'd lock in that price, because you never know, John Mayer might raise the price with inflation going the way it is. Lock in that price, November 1st. And we sent you all a survey. If you didn't get one, please ask somebody at the front. Please fill that survey out, because we designed this conference around what you tell us you want to do. And the question mark, we really love the Eucharistic procession. That's going to be a go. By the way, it has 11,000 hits on TikTok, right, for the Eucharistic procession. Give yourself a round of applause on that one. But we need your input. I think the one day seems to work. We're going to do this gala next year. Hopefully, we're going to move some timing around, but I think it was really tight. The panels were amazing. And all of those are recorded, so if you stepped out, you want to watch something more, you want to pass it on to your friends, you all have a digital link. Feel free to pass it on, because although there was only 125 people in the room, most of these talks will get 50,000 hits over time. 50,000 hits. We have talks from Napa Institute that have gotten 300,000 hits. 300,000 hits. And they were breakouts, meaning there was like 40 people in the original recordation of it. So you spread it around, let it go viral, post it on whatever you want to do. Now, I wasn't going to tell you this. I was going to kind of like save this for the end, but Jim Otteson kind of guilted me into this, to be honest. So I'm going to be honest. No, I really like Jim's presentation. Vivek, who was our speaker earlier today, then he was coming tonight. I talked to him just about an hour ago. He is in Washington, cannot get here, so he was going to Zoom in. And it was going to be like $25,000 to have a screen up here. And I go, whoa, $25,000? So we're going to record an interview with Vivek. This will allow you to get to In Vino Veritas early. And we're going to record a talk, bake it into the digital link, and we'll do that in the next week or so. He is the most articulate person in the United States on woke capitalism. He's on the board. He reminded me of a Catholic university or Catholic high school. He wrote the book Woke Inc. It's the treatise on woke capitalism, along with the digital version of 2020 Principled Entrepreneurship. He is totally online. Andrew, he wants to get involved with our little finance investment group. I bragged about Steve Auth. I go, hey, Vivek, I don't know what you're doing there, but we got all kinds of great people here. He was very sad to miss it, but he was extremely asking for forgiveness. And I said, okay, well, we're Judeo-Christian. We'll give you forgiveness. So I want to give thanks for all of those who participated in the organization of this event. John Mayer, our executive director, Dr. Andrew Bella, thank you. Kathleen Ojeda, her sister Claire O'Reilly, my assistant Mary Baggett. Our sacristan, Nathan Borchers, Jean Jacoby, our registrar, Ben O'Neill, Fran Meyer, who's our speaker committee. He's not here, but he was involved. Charles Bush, not my son, but he could have been, graduating from the Bush School. Father Robert Spitzer, we mentioned. Deacon Frank Riley, poor guy, got COVID before this event started, so at least he wasn't a super spreader. But Zach Filer, who has done all of our digital, Tony Anzatoli in marketing, and Grady Conley, the guy that puts all this stuff on TikTok. Give them a round of applause. And Steve Oth said, this is the largest Eucharistic procession in New York. I don't know if it is, but I'm going with it. Father Roger Landry was our main celebrant yesterday. Thank you, Father Roger. How'd you end in the back up of the room, in the back of the room? Ed Sweeney, who, anything you need in New York, Ed's got a friend. And two dear priests, Father Michael Duffy from Rockville Center. He brought the 50 people from the St. Agnes Cathedral choir in Rockville Center, Long Island, and Father Sean Succo, who is from the Brooklyn Diocese. Give them a round of applause. Now, the real guy, the fix-it and repair guy in New York, it's... I don't know if they just call this cronyism or what they call it. Doesn't matter. I just get it done. And the name of his company is I Got a Guy. And I think that means I can get it done. And so Vinny's the guy that closed down 5th Avenue, 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue, 8th Avenue, 50th Street. Give a round of applause for Vinny. Now, when a guy shows up and says he can close down the major arteries of New York City during rush hour, your first instance is to say, not true. But when he says his name's Vinny, you're good to go. You're good to go. Is that right, Father Sirico? I think I got that right. I'm from Michigan. Also, thanks to the Sisters of Life, one of the most thriving orders in America. They were present. Our table sponsors lead off, my good friend, member of the board, Larry Blanford, and I sit on this board, EWTN, the largest Catholic television network in the world. Alliance Defending Freedom, St. Paul Center, World Youth Alliance, Legatus, the International Justice Mission, the Knights of Columbus, the Catholic Information Center, and the Catholic Finance Association, all sponsors of tonight's event. Give them a round of applause. So we appreciate your participation. New York is a complex place, especially post-COVID, but I think the team has executed well. The panels were extraordinary. They will go viral, as we said, and I really, truly enjoyed them. I hope you'll see you at the next summer conference. Let us know if you want to go to Eastern Europe with Steph and I for a fabulous trip. We're meeting with Cardinal Schönborn, the Cardinal of Hungary as well, and heads of state, heads of the church, and civic leaders throughout the community. We have a great time. We just left Malta and Sicily earlier in the year. We had the president, the prime minister, and the head of the bank at our meeting in Malta. It was fabulous. We talked about the only pro-life country other than Poland left in the world. So. Thank you all, and we'll be back for our program with our honoree, Doug DeVos. Thank you. Okay, so I know there's going to be a presentation, Kathleen. She runs my trains back here. I see two beautiful chairs, but is he going to present from the podium? And then how am I interviewing him on those chairs, those fancy chairs over there? Okay, got it. It's my privilege. Doug and I, Doug DeVos, who is our honoree tonight, but also our presenter, Doug is part of the Amway. He's co-chair to Amway, which is an $8 billion organization. They invented direct-to-consumer business 50, 60 years ago. I don't really know. Doug's much younger than I am, but we're both from Michigan. Now, I'm from the east side, and he's from the west side, so I would say I'm from the right side, he's from the left side, but actually, he's very aligned to us and to our Catholic faith, and I met him through Charles Koch's organization called Stand Together. And he chairs Stand Together in their movement, but he also is focused on the faith-based initiatives. So one day, Charles Koch, a libertarian, a really good guy, has done some great things, and I don't believe they ought to inhibit people donating money to charities because Bill Gates got off on the left side. Charles Koch has done an amazing amount of things, no matter what they say about him in the press. He has done amazing things. He understands Catholic social teaching, but he didn't realize he did. And he's written books on it, and these are books that we teach in the Bush School. He's very aligned to subsidiarity, and Doug is as well. And so Doug and I became good friends, being Michiganders, but also faith-based. And he's the co-chair of Amway. He was previously the president and worked there since 1986. He's just not an executive, but he's got an incredible energy. And you can tell, we were talking all day about Michael Novak and our faith being incorporated in our business. And this is what Doug does from his father's leadership and his tutelage, is that he is all about incorporating the faith in the business. And when it starts at the top, all the things we were talking about today, Jim Otteson in particular saying, you got to tell the truth. These are good business practices, ladies and gentlemen. If you just, don't buy the whole faith deal, I know you all do because you're here. If you want to do the right thing for business, tell people the truth. They may not want to hear it, but in the end, they're going to respect you for it. And this is what Amway and why it's been so successful, the largest direct-to-consumer organization, I think, in the world. And it has done an incredible job. And 80% of the business is outside of the United States of America, okay? And countries like China and Japan and India and so forth. So I've really enjoyed getting to know Doug. We've hung around with Steve Green, who built the Museum of the Bible. I'm embarrassed, Catholics, that many of you either A, haven't been to the Museum of the Bible, or worse, haven't heard of it. This man put $800 million, Steve Green, into the Museum of the Bible, and our evangelical friends, our Protestant friends, have done so much to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we have a lot more in common than we have in difference. And thank you. But Doug, like all Protestant leaders, are very embraced in his faith in the person of Jesus Christ. This, since Vatican II, we started 60 years ago to read the Bible, to realize there's a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, which the Protestants got straight during the Reformation, I guess. And one of the greatest things I ever heard was from Cardinal Ratzinger, who then became Pope Benedict XVI. He said, you must have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. This was a cardinal who was head of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith and became a pope. You must have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And our Protestant friends have been very articulate in this regard. And we have the beauty of the church, the beauty of the sacrifice of the daily Mass, which is the recreation, the revisiting of Calvary. Every day at Mass, we're at Calvary. And Father Spitzer says, we're really at Calvary. We're not just pretending we're at Calvary, we're really at Calvary. And our Protestant friends have been able to evangelize, and I think from the combination of the two, we can form the greatest movement, which is the truth, Christianity. So Doug's going to give us some initial comments, then I'm going to have some follow-up comments, and then we'll end our evening with the award to Doug for Virtue in the Marketplace. So Doug, please come up.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. Good evening. It's a tremendous honor to have a chance to be here with everyone and to spend a little time talking about the whole theme of the conference about principled entrepreneurship. Now, I attended one of the sessions this afternoon, and whenever I go to conferences like this, I'm reminded how much I don't know. And so my presentation tonight is not going to try to compete in any way with all the smart people in the room, because there's no way I could even come close. But what I want to do tonight is to talk a little bit about how I've seen principled entrepreneurship in my life and how I've tried to follow that example. And so I want to spend a little time talking about that, and the reason I want to talk about it is that hopefully through these stories, it'll encourage all of us to keep sharing our own vision and our own commitment to entrepreneurship and to helping and connecting with other people as well. You are all leaders in whatever capacity you are working in, wherever you are leaders, and people connect with you. They will listen to you, they will watch you, and it's up to us to continue to live our faith in our lives, in every capacity of our lives, so that people can see that our faith is real to us. It's not just something we talk about, it's something that we live every day. So let me give you just a little context here of the experience that I grew up in my life. And I got to talk about my father and his business partner, Jay Venando. So they developed a relationship in high school. Very simple. My dad saw that Jay had a car and he wanted to ride to school. And so he went and said, I'll pay you some gas money. And Jay said, that's a good thing. And they've hit off this wonderful relationship. Dad really enjoyed him. Jay, never took a book home from school and always got A's. My dad never took a book home from school, and he just never took a book home from school. So they complemented themselves in relationships. In fact, my dad would always say that he passed Latin. The Latin teacher said he would give him a passing grade if he promised never to take the class again. And so Dad said, hey, no problem, I can do that. We'll make that work. But they developed this friendship. In the context of this friendship, they would always talk about, they wanted to get in business together. They were entrepreneurs. This is the time coming out of the Great Depression, going into World War II. And they had these ideas, and they would talk together in high school about this. When they went off to World War II, they wrote letters back and forth to each other. Someday this war is going to end. Someday we're going to get in business together. Someday we're going to have a chance to be the entrepreneurs that we want to be. And so I just wanted to give you a little context there about that's kind of the background of what I saw of these of my father and his partner. And so I want to touch base then on kind of 4 elements that I think are critical and that hopefully are helpful for all of us to think through in our own lives and in our own work, that I saw them demonstrate their whole lives, that I've tried to follow and emulate as well. And so hopefully it'll be helpful. So let me kind of just dive in here with the first one that I saw them live, and again, it's kind of coming out of World War II, was this idea of being curious. What does the future hold? And I remember talking to them once, and they had done some videos that we just completed a world war. The future was ours. We're looking forward. All the hope that they could ever muster in their lives, they wanted to go forth and move forward and make things happen. They had this spirit of adventure. And they had an attitude that no matter what was happening, it was going to be positive. And I had an experience with somebody a number of years ago. I like to be on boats. I like to sail. There's a lake in northern Michigan, and I've been sailing a long time, so I should know better to look around for other sailboats, but I didn't, and I hit another boat. Luckily, sailboats go pretty slow. Nobody got hurt. My fault. He had the right of way. I said, I'm so sorry. We go through this whole process. We figure everything out. And I asked him, I said, now why weren't you angry at me? And he said, well, the difference between an ordeal and adventure is your attitude. He says, I just chose to have a good attitude. We figured it out. It was your fault. You admitted it, and we found a solution, so let's move on. And this sense of adventure is something that they had in life, and they just kept going forward. And even when things went wrong, they kept going forward. So let me kind of walk you through their early stages here. Their early stages was they got back from World War II. They wanted to start a business. They started a flight school. They wanted to teach people how to fly. The only problem was neither one of them knew how to fly. So you would think if that's going to be your business, that might not be the best choice. So they started down this avenue of teaching people how to fly. The airport in northern Grand Rapids wasn't open yet. They were delayed a little bit, but they had customers that they were ready for. And so they bought floats for the plane, and they put it on the river next to where the airport was going to be, and they taught people to fly off the river. Didn't matter that the airport wasn't open. They still had work to do. They had customers to serve. Well, the airplane business was great in the daytime, but couldn't teach people at night, so they started a restaurant at night, and as they would say, everybody should be in the restaurant business once. So it's the hardest business in the world, so for all of you in the restaurant entertainment business, congratulations and thank you, but it's hard business. They did that for a while. They decided to wrap it up. They read a book about sailing to the Caribbean, and they thought they traded a plane for a boat, actually in Connecticut, right around here, and they decided they were going to sail to South America. And the fact that they had never sailed before didn't, distract them from that either. So they had no idea what they were doing, and if you read their logbooks, you'll just see about the challenges they had all the way going down the coast of the eastern United States. In fact, they got so lost trying to get out of New York Harbor, the Coast Guard couldn't find them. It took them a long time. They said, we've never seen a boat this lost, and they were up in some swamp in New Jersey that they'd found their way into. To literally the Coast Guard said, look, go out to here, turn right, see the S on the compass, keep focused on that, and in a few days, if it gets warmer, you're going the right direction. And that's this was their spirit that they went through, and they did great right until they got off to the coast of Cuba and the boat sank. So they got rescued, but their story, as they talk about it, was that you just don't give up. The boat sank, but that never dissuaded them from their desire to travel to South America. They just had to do it differently now. They had this zest, this curiosity, this interest in moving forward and not letting things bother them and not letting things stop them. And I think so often of how many times I allow things to stop me. I read somewhere, and again, it's hard for me to put things together. I'm not smart enough, but I read somewhere, I said the definition of maturity is when you stop being curious. We all have experiences with children, especially the 2-year-olds. Why? Eat your brother. Why? Be nice to your sister. Why? Always asking questions. As we get older, we stop asking questions. We stop being curious. I wonder why. What is it that holds us back? So what other people think of us? So other people feel about us? I want to encourage all of us to stay curious, to keep finding our way forward. So their story, and I'll complete this section. Their story, they come back from the trip. The boat sank. They found their way back. They heard about a business opportunity, a company out of California called Neutralite. Jay's mom had a cousin who was in this business, and Dad and Jay were always looking for businesses to be an entrepreneur. And Jay said, my mom's got this cousin who's got this business opportunity for us. And my dad said, Jay, he's your cousin, your family. You talk to him. I'm not going to talk to him. I'm going out. Well, Jay did talk to him and said, this business looks pretty good. I think we could do this. So it's 1949. They go to Chicago to go to a meeting. He said it was a huge meeting. All these people from Newton. It was just a huge meeting. There must have been 100 people there. They came back and they said, we're going to make a decision. They made a decision on the way back, said this is a good product. This is a good business. Nutrilite was one of the very pioneers in direct selling and in nutrition and vitamins. So it's a good product, it's a good business. This is what we're going to do. And they just kept working at it all the time. But when you start a business and when you're an entrepreneur, you better be curious because it's not going to go well all the time. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have troubles. So they did Nutrilite for about 10 years. There was a number of challenges with the company and a whole bunch of other complicated things. They said, we like this concept. And that's when they started Amway in 1959. And the rest is history, as Tim kind of talks about the size and the scope of the business from there. But they were always curious. They always had a sense of adventure. The whole idea that we've gone internationally is because they just wanted to travel, so let's take the business there too. There's other people who might have an entrepreneurial idea here too, so let's go. Let's figure it out. My hope is that for all of us, we'll have that same sense of curiosity and what's next. God's got great plans for all of us. We know that. Where will he take us next? And are we curious enough? Are we open enough to his leading to overcome our barriers that hold us back so that we can take the next step forward? Well, the second area I'd like to talk about is this idea of believing in people. That's what I learned. That's what I watched all the time. We believed in people. The idea that the whole idea of Amway is that everybody has an opportunity to have a business of their own selling our products. That's what they do. And there's a lot behind it, and I'm not going to go to explain, but that's the basic idea. And everybody said, you think that idea is going to work? There was a guy who lived in the little town next door to Ada, Michigan, where where we're from, where we're based. He would drive by the company on a regular basis, going to work in Grand Rapids and little town of Lowell, back and forth. And every day he drove by, he'd say, that thing will never work. And he'd see us build another building, or he'd see it grow. A few years would go by, and he'd keep telling himself that thing will never work. And the only reason we know about it is about 20 years into it, he finally stopped in to see my dad and Jay one day, told him the story, and said, I think it's going to work. And I said, well, thanks very much for telling us that. We appreciate it. But they went in this belief in people. They believed that if you gave somebody an opportunity to have a business of their own, if you just gave somebody that opportunity, people would do something with it. They would take it. They would move it forward. They would make it their own. They would do the things necessary to be successful because so many people are looking for an opportunity. So many people feel stuck in their lives. And we believed in people. One of the early days at a convention in Malaysia, I was in high school at the time and traveled with Dad. We had just started there. We were about 2 or 3 years into the business there. We were having a convention. A few thousand people were going to come to an Amway meeting. And early days in Malaysia, Dad had a chance to meet with the Prime Minister of Malaysia before the meeting. And they had this wonderful conversation about new business coming into Malaysia, investing, and all those sorts of things. But the Prime Minister started to talk a little bit, and he said, it's a tough time in Malaysia. He said, our economy's not good, and the reason it's not good is because our greatest natural resources of copper, tin, and oil are all depressed on the global market, and therefore our economy's really suffering, really hurting, and he kind of went on in that vein. And then he turned to my dad and said, but your business is growing. So you got thousands of people coming to a meeting tonight. He says, I can't get thousands of people to come to a meeting. You got all these people coming. What is it? And my dad said, well, Mr. Prime Minister, you may believe that the greatest resources of Malaysia are copper, tin, and oil. But in our business, we believe the greatest resources of Malaysia are the people of Malaysia. And we invest in people. And we've seen that demonstrated throughout our life. And we've seen people rise to the occasion from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds. In fact, in the early days of business, a lot of consultants would come to Amway and they say, you might want to change this model a little bit. And Dad and Jay would say, well, what do you mean? So you might want to focus your attention on your sales force a little bit. You don't just want to let anybody in here. You got to have some qualifications. You got to have some barriers. They need some sales experience. They got to have good presentation skills. They got to do all these other sorts of things. And whenever somebody would come up with ideas like that, Dad and Jay would say, you can leave now. Because our question was always, well, who are you going to leave out? Who are you going to leave out? Who are you going to deny an opportunity to just because they don't have some experience, just because they don't have great presentation skills? In fact, in the early days, we tried to find people who were terrible presenters. People that would stutter, people that would do other things, that had all these challenges presenting. Why? So that the person in the audience would say, if that guy can do it, then maybe I can do it too. If they can do it, maybe I can do it too. And we believe in people. And that's the whole message of the gospel, isn't it? What Christ did for us, to save us, forgive us from our sins, for God to bring us back to Him. So that's been the story of, I think, principled entrepreneurship helps us to believe in people. Well, the third area I want to talk about, we talked a lot about today and here at the conference, is about this idea of free enterprise. You know, I can't dive into it too much further, but we built our business around that, and so much so that, in fact, if you go to the Amway headquarters in front of our facilities in Ada, Michigan, you'll see an exhibit that was actually here in 1964 at the World's Fair in New York. And it was the Hall of Free Enterprise at the World's Fair, the World's Expo at that point in time in 1964, and it was the pillars, the pillars of free enterprise and the whole Hall of Free Enterprise that they bought. We brought the exhibit back to Ada. We wanted to found the business on these principles, on these free market principles, on these ideas, and make them real. So many times when we talk about these sorts of things, they're conceptual. We have a lot of studies and we need all of that sort of stuff, but these are real. Because as you go through these 10 pillars, at the end of the day, the tools of production are with the progress-seeking people. It's the individuals that move us forward. It's the entrepreneurs. It's the risk takers. It's the people who take different decisions, who chart a different path, who are able to move the world forward. And so this idea of free enterprise is something that we'll never move away from. In fact, we began to study it. We began to look around and find out that so many people are desperate for it. We did a study. We partnered with a university in Germany to do a study around the world. It's this free enterprise index we tried to create of how many people would be entrepreneurial, how many people really believe in these ideas. And we found that the number of people who supported and were cheering for it was really high, 60, 70%. We believe in this. And then we found a huge gap. Would you do it? Would you start your own business? Oh, no. Big gap. That they wouldn't start their own business. They wanted to, but they were held back for some reason. And as we studied further, we said, well, why are you holding back? I said, well, first of all, how do I get a product? How do I get the operations? How do I do all these sorts of things? There's just all these business barriers that were in place. And then the third thing they said, well, I got nobody to train me. Who's going to help me? These were ideas and concepts that we tried to put into our business, but these are ideas and concepts that apply, as I was listening to the presentation this afternoon, in some of these institutions, when you can have a justice system, when you can have people in place to provide the right environment that's stable, that allows people to express their entrepreneurial spirit, to express these ideas and do this sort of work. So we believe that those sorts of things are important. Of course, you believe it well. And then the fourth area, maybe just to talk about a little bit, is this whole idea of leadership. There's a learning center, another business in Grand Rapids. They have a learning center, training center, and I was leaving, and I remember looking on the wall as they were putting there, they're saying, nothing changes until the leader changes. And then it's not new or provocative, but it just caught me at that point in time of how important leadership is. Steve and I, my partner Steve Van Andel and I at Amway, we had a major growth initiative that we were launching, and we had talked about it, plotted and scheming, doing all these sorts of things, working it up. We kind of announced it, and it was a big thud in the organization. Nobody really got it. And we began to go, well, why is that? We did all this work on it. And they said, well, there's a few people on your leadership team that aren't involved, aren't on the same page with you guys. And until you deal with that, we don't believe that you're genuine about what you want to do, because we wanted to make this improvement and this improvement. We want to do all these sorts of things. And the organization kind of said, until you deal with the stuff that's really obvious to us, we're not going to believe you're serious about where you want to go. It's a powerful message for us. It wasn't just the words or the marketing presentation that we wanted to make. It was the actions that we needed to take as leaders to demonstrate we were serious about the direction that we wanted to go. Leadership matters. Nothing changes until the leader changes. And it can happen at scale, too. I want to tell a little bit of the story of Grand Rapids now. Grand Rapids, Michigan, home of President Gerald R. Ford. And right now, we share our Michigan background, Tim. We talk about that a little bit. A lot of people talk about Grand Rapids, this great, wonderful, dynamic, growing city, this vibrant downtown. But in 1976, at the end of the 1976 campaign, when President Ford came there for the last night so he would vote the next day, the main road in Grand Rapids was closed off to him and the motorcade. The Secret Service said there's just too many abandoned buildings, too much risk for people to be up there to take a shot at you. We're not going to let you take the motorcade down the center of your hometown. That was a huge embarrassment for our community. President Ford shortly thereafter decided that the museum that he wanted, or the presidential museum, was going to be in Grand Rapids because he loved Grand Rapids and he wanted that to happen. And a lot of the leaders in the city at that time, my father and Jay Van Andel included, and many other leaders said, we've got to do something different. We've got to find a way to invest in this city and this community differently. This is embarrassment for us, and it's embarrassment for Jerry Ford. And so they began to figure out how to bring hospitals downtown, how to bring universities downtown, how to revitalize the downtown business district, how to get a hotel downtown so when people came there, they actually liked it. They began this whole series of investing, of doing things differently and building up. And so we were part of that as well in this adventure of building things up and trying things. And not, it's a good story. Not everything worked perfectly. We had one investment. We got involved with a development downtown. Our family did. This was a stage. This was a number of years into it. It was in the mid or late 80s at this point. So things had started to go forward. Things were moving better, getting a little better in Grand Rapids. But we got involved in one that went really bad, really sour. We built a building and this different type of siding, and the bricks were falling off, so we had to put nets around so the bricks didn't fall on people who were walking by, and the toilets all backed up, so the whole thing smelled, and we had all these other sorts of problems with it. It was just a disaster. And at that time, we were in the generational transition, so my generation was kind of around the table when my dad and Jay were talking about what to do next. And we had a presentation from the team that said, well, there's really two paths you can take. Here's what you can do. You can rebuild it. You can kind of start from scratch and rebuild the thing. Here's the cost. Here's the risk. Here's the opportunity with that. Or you can tear it down, take the insurance money, call it good, and leave it. This was right about the time when all those neat disaster movies were coming out. So we thought, let's take it down. Let's make a movie. It may have been me who brought that suggestion up. I said, we're going to call in Hollywood. Let's make a movie. Let's blow the thing up. Man, it's going to be so much fun. We'll put Grand Rapids on the map. This is obviously a better solution than taking the risk of rebuilding. Let's do this. Come on, let's make this happen. And so a few of us started to joke around that. Well, I thought that was a great idea. And all of a sudden, I recognized that my dad and Jay weren't participating in the festivities. In fact, Jay was at one end of the table just shaking his head. And I kind of saw that and thought I'd be quiet for a minute. My father looks over at him and says, Jay, what do you think? And Jay just shook his head and says, no. He said, we don't blow things up. We build things up. That's what we do. We're going to take this path. We're going to go back and we're going to do it right and we're going to make it go forward. Leaders don't blow things up. Leaders build things up. And I guess that's the summary I want to maybe leave us with the comments tonight. I want to encourage you. I don't necessarily want to challenge you because you all are rising to the challenge just by being here. But I want to encourage you to be leaders and examples for these ideas that we've talked about today, for these principles that have been part of the discussions. I want to challenge you or to encourage you to keep leading. I want to encourage you to be curious about how you can do it better, what you can do new. What's the barrier that you can overcome? What's been slowing you down where you can find a way to get through it? How are you going to believe in people? Express trust. Take the risk of trusting somebody else, of giving someone the respect that they deserve, of recognizing the talents and gifts that God has given each and every person in this room and in this world. And then to be the leader that lives it. Many times people would ask me about my dad or about Jay, and they say, what are they like behind the scenes? And I said, they're the same. What you see is what you get. They're the same people, outside of work or outside of the spotlight as they were when they were at work or in the spotlight. When we express the values at Amway, we talked about the founders' fundamentals, these concepts that Dad and Jay talked about of freedom, family, hope, and reward. Those were some of the ideas that were running around in their mind, but they would articulate everything was surrounded and supported by their faith. And they wanted to live their faith. So when I have a chance to talk about principled entrepreneurship, that's the example I get. And I'm reminded, I'll just close with one last story. Early in my career, I had a chance to move to Europe and work with the Amway business over there. And my wife and I had just gotten married, and to be honest with you, I really didn't want to go. I was pretty comfortable in Ada, Michigan, pretty comfortable with what was going on, didn't really think about that adventure, didn't maybe have the adventure spirit that I needed, but my wife did. So guess what happened? We went. But before we went, I had a chance to talk to Jay Van Andel. And Jay was trying to encourage me a little bit and tell me what I could expect. And Jay said, in the midst of this conversation, he went through a lot of things. He said, I'm really counting on you to do a good job over there. I'm really counting on you to do a good job over there. And I remember when that happened, I thought to myself, really? You're counting on me? I don't really even want to go. I'm trying to find an excuse to stay. Counting on you. Well, it was a great experience for us. We had I learned so much. We had a wonderful time, in the whole experience. And when we came back home afterwards, I reflected on that conversation again. And I realized that Jay wasn't just talking to me. And he wasn't just talking about that assignment. He was expressing his belief in people and counting on people to be the leaders and to be the people that they can be, that God had created them to be. That was his life. That was his expectation of me. Whether it was an assignment in Europe, that didn't really matter. What mattered was a life that he wanted to encourage me to live. And I think that's the thought maybe I just leave you with. Who in your life is counting on you? Someone you know, someone you respect, someone you maybe haven't met yet. Someone's counting on you to express to them, to share the gospel, to share your faith, to share your views, to share a hand, to help them through something that's tough, to share some time. Who in your circle is counting on you to be there for them when they have questions or concerns or when they find themselves in a tough spot. So I know that it's conferences like this, friends like this, colleagues like this, that can help us all band together. So when people are counting on us, we'll never let them down. We'll be there for them to move forward. And having chances like this to be together to talk about these issues help us all be a little stronger, a little braver, a little more adventurous, to touch more people in a positive way. So thank you for giving me a chance to share a few thoughts with you tonight, and I'll look forward to chatting with Tim a little bit later. Thanks, everybody. All right, that one, that works?
This work? Yep. Thank you, Doug. That was amazing. I'm almost thinking this is anticlimactic. I think that was a great presentation. But I'm just going to drill down a little bit on your faith. So the thing I'm asked often is, how do you incorporate your faith in the business? Are you ever afraid of getting sued about talking about your faith? Do you have Bible studies in the business? What do you do day to day?
Well, we, you know, at Amway, you know, when we were a global business, we found that expressing your faith and telling people what you believe is attractive. People want to know who you are. And as we talk about business ideas, and you're talking about somebody starting their own business with Amway, they're counting on us to be around there for the next 10, 20, 30 years. They want to know your character, your integrity. And even if they don't believe, or they don't believe the same things you do, or have, you know, or same align, they respect the fact that you express who you are and that you're genuine. And so our experience has been that it's okay to express who we are. It's okay to go out there and talk about our faith. And respect others as well in the process. And so we haven't had issues. In the company, we have not sponsored. We have not gone out actively tried to sponsor, a Bible study at the company. Although that happens all the time. Many employees come together, and we have had times, when national tragedies or things that happen at 9/11. We just. It was a funny thing. It was before I was president of the company. My brother Dick was president. He was traveling. Steve and Andel he was the chair at the time, and so Steve was traveling. I was kind of the senior family member at the company. I said, we're going to have a prayer meeting. So whoever wants to, but we're going to get together and we're going to, pray and talk about this, because everybody was very distressed and distraught, obviously. And I said, let's just come together. My father was in the area, so he came in, and we just got together, talked a little bit, prayed together, and it was a very natural kind of reaction to what was going on. But we've never had objections. Now, sometimes if we go too far, we try to push our views on somebody else, but to express our views and to be genuine about who we are has never gotten a negative reaction.
That's what I found as well. I graduated from a state school, Western Michigan, in 1975, and that was the last time I was in Grand Rapids until...
Well, you can come back.
I was back there in October. I went to an event that Doug hosted, about 30 or 40 of us, and at the Amway Hotel, which is amazing. I'd heard so many things about it, but never been there. And I walked in. The first thing he said to me in the opening cocktail reception, Wall Street Journal, Eucharistic procession, middle of Manhattan. He had just read about our Eucharistic procession, our first one that we just did, repeated yesterday. But during the break on Saturday, I walked around Grand Rapids for the first time since 1975. And what he said is an understatement. I called up my wife that night and I said, this town has been completely resurrected. And I'd kind of heard about it through friends, but I didn't buy it. I thought they were just being optimistic. But really, these two families of Amway, when you walked around the town, had their names in the hospital and the library. It was amazing what they had done. And it's not a huge town. I mean, it actually is a pretty big populace, but the downtown area is, 15, 20 blocks. It's really beautiful, easy to walk around. But this is the destruction of our country has been from the loss of our cities, And it was from the lack of police. And here we are, defund the police, and we were doing this 50 years ago without protesting. But how did you do that? Your families working together with the city, private-public partnerships. You resurrected one of the great cities of America out of ashes.
Yeah. Well, it was just relationships, and it was the ability to, we're big enough, as you said, we're kind of big enough to have real issues, but we're small enough that everybody knows each other, and you can call each other, and everyone has a connection somehow. So there was a spirit, there was a fundamental base of trust, and there is a huge faith community in Western Michigan, and I remember somebody observed that there were more churches per capita than bars in Grand Rapids, and even though Grand Rapids has since become known as Beer City, USA, that was a lot of the history. But you have that foundational, that like I was saying about our values, that surrounding of faith that supports everything we do and guides everything, and so you could bring people together from different institutions, government and business and education, community, and say, hey, what are we going to do here? So let's put a convention center in. Let's expand the let's expand the arena. Let's do these other sorts of things. And it's taken a lot of time, and everybody became part of it. And it wasn't just the people who put their name on the buildings, it was the people who put their names on the bricks. It was the people who bought a room or bought a bed in the hospital or did something like that. It spread. Everybody did their part. Everybody took a leadership role and has a sense of pride and saying, hey, this is our city. How are we going to make it better?
It's beautiful. So if you get a chance, go back to Grand Rapids. It's a gorgeous city right along, not too far from Lake Michigan. And I'm going to ask one more serious question, then I'm going to get into some other fun, and that is Protestants and Catholics. So the Reformation is 500 years ago, and the western part of Michigan is known as the Bible Belt. Okay, it's where Dutch Reform is created. A lot of very sound Christian business people, Steelcase, Amway, and I can go on. There's probably 50 companies over there. They've been very successful. And the east side, where Detroit and Ann Arbor is, probably more Catholic-based because you have a lot of immigrants that came in there with the auto business. But where do you think, we're in a world that's upside down socially, where do you think Protestants and Catholics are headed together? And give me a very honest observation.
Well, I got to be a little careful, don't I?
No. You're outnumbered by a factor of 95 to 1. No, there's 4. I think there's 4 other Protestants here.
Well, in most of the things in my life, I look for the similarities, and I look what brings us together. And I look so the obvious one is that we focus on Christ. That brings us together, and that's more powerful than anything that could separate us, than anything that would hold us apart or do things differently. And a few years ago, we had a Louis Palau crusade in Grand Rapids, and actually, Luis was there the weekend my dad died, and my dad had really wanted to have something like that. He wanted that so desperately because he said the only thing that's going to bring our community together is Christ. That the power of Christ. That's the only thing that can. So those things are important. So I think the differences of our faith traditions, like anything in history, you're going to have strengths and weaknesses, and we come at things maybe a bit differently. But let's not focus on the divisions. Let's focus on what we align around, and figure out how we can build on those alignment areas. And I haven't dived that close into the operations of the Catholic Church or the Christian Reformed Church or the other Reformed churches in the area. to try to give an analysis of that, all I do is I sit back and I say, how do we find ways to work together? How do we reach out and love each other and love our neighbors in a way? Because until we get that part right, all the other social issues are going to be winning, and we're going to be, talking about things that really aren't helping people. But if we talk about Christ and if we stay focused on that, then we'll be able to help people better.
I think with our Protestants friends, I start off for myself saying, did you know that Catholics believe that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior? They are like complete deer in the headlights. They were like, what? And they really throw us into a totally different bank. But that's the real, and once you get that going, then the conversation goes easily from there. And in Grand Rapids, one of my mentors, spiritual mentors, is here tonight. Can't believe it. Father Robert Sirico, and he founded the Acton Institute more than 30 years ago. He just retired, so he says. And he has really promoted, the Acton Institute is really a think tank about free markets, really. And believe it or not, one of the biggest funders of the Acton Institute, and probably why they're in Grand Rapids, is the Amway family, the DeVos family. And so I always heard, I never knew Doug or his family, but obviously knew Father Sirico. One of my best confessions was with you, Father Sirico, 30 years ago. We were down in Florida at a Legatus conference. And you must have, you met one of the great Catholic priests of America, and you probably thought he was different in many ways. He's very similar, especially to a guy like Father Spitzer or many of the priests that come here today. So how was your engagement with Acton Institute, and why would you support an organization that, although not ostensibly Catholic, was led by a Catholic priest?
Well, because we liked him. We shared values. We shared vision. We shared values. We had the same view, from a faith perspective, from a free market perspective, and from a commitment perspective of talking about these things and figuring out how to get it from talk to action, and so it would actually impact people's life. How do we move it so that things are really different, so that barriers go down, that opportunity goes up? And when you have kindred spirits like that, you want to find ways to work together. That's why all the people here and what you do, you and Steph, Tim, and so many of you here, you're always building partnerships and relationships. And if you share vision and values, then it's just about who has a strength and weakness, and how can we be better together? Because we'll always be better together if we figure that out than we will be apart. And so we just got to figure out how to work together. And so, and with Father Sirico, that's pretty easy. Just do what he says.
He was great. There, you heard him, Father. Yes.
Oh, I'm in trouble now.
Sit down, Doug. This ain't an altar call. No, I just want to tell you something about this family who I've known for the full thing. And they're not that much of a funder of Acton. I mean, in terms of Acton's thing, they don't just buy people. They leverage their gifts. But here's the thing to give you the character of this family and this man and his wife. COVID descends upon the world. Roughly March, April, right? You remember this? We don't know, nonprofits, businesses don't know what's going to happen. So we're planning, what are we going to do? We have to cut back. We may have to lay people off. We didn't take the PPP funding. We knew we weren't going to do that for a variety of reasons. We get a call from their office. I don't know if you even know this. They said, we're sending a contribution to you equivalent to what they had sent the previous year before we asked for it, because there's usually a funding cycle. we're sending this to you because we think you need it now. We hadn't asked for anything. We didn't know. What a comfort that was. And there was another family in Grand Rapids who did something similar, and that just bespeaks the culture of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm from Brooklyn, right? Well, maybe there's a Dutch connection there. But this is what happens in Grand Rapids, and our working together and our common commitment to the cause of Jesus Christ, to the building up of the society, of our society, and free enterprise. This is the real thing. This guy is the real thing.
Thank you, Father Sirico. I think he just gave my talk for the Virtuous Leadership Award. Thank you, Father Sirico. He and I share a love for Amarone wine. I won't go into what that is, but he came to our summer conference, and I had two bottles of Amarone wine at his table, so they consumed them. But anyway, I'm going to ask a fun question. You have a couple of hobbies. One of them is America's Cup. And coincidentally, I met Steph 40 years ago, April 9th, 1982, at 7 o'clock Pacific. And I met her with her roommate. And she married, ultimately, a guy who was a tactician. And, you know, a tactician is like a pitcher on a baseball team or a quarterback on a football team. Pretty important guy when it comes to sailing. And long before I knew Doug, this guy was his tactician, and this guy had won the America's Cup before with another operator, and he was the tactician for Doug DeVos. So one of Steph's best friends marries a tactician, becomes a tactician for Doug's America's Cup boat. And tell me what it's like. Why would you own an America's Cup boat? What is it all about, and how has it been?
Well, you get into the America's Cup because you're too stupid to say no. And a sport. So it starts with the sport. So we got into sailing on the Great Lakes. My dad, my older brothers, our family, we would cruise on a sailboat. It was a great family time. That was our family vacation in the summer. And then as we got older, we started to kind of race boats. And all I ever wanted to do is be with my dad and my brothers. And as time went on, my sister sailed with us a little bit too, not as much. But it was a family thing. And so that's what got us into the sport. We loved it. We met a lot of other people, and just as time goes, you kind of keep picking the next level, and we kind of found our way into the America's Cup, which is kind of it's one of the oldest, for those of you who don't know, it's the oldest trophy in sports. It goes back to 1851. And New York Yacht Club here held it for the longest winning streak in sports history, 132 years, until 1983, and then they lost it. And so we're partnering with New York Yacht Club to try to win it back. And so you do it because you're passionate.
Fabulous. When is the next one? It's every 3 years?
The next race will be in 2024 in Barcelona.
In Barcelona.
In Barcelona. So keep cheering for American Magic. That's the name of the team.
American Magic. Okay. That's kind of like the Orlando Magic.
It's close. It actually.
That's his basketball team in Orlando. But is it by coincidence?
It's by coincidence.
Okay.
The Yacht America won the first race, and the Yacht Magic won the second race. So New York Yacht Club thought they'd put those two together, and that's what they wanted to name the team. And we thought that was a fun historical connection. And then the linkage to Orlando Magic was, in fact, I asked the question. I said, "Are you sure you want to do this? Because it could be confusing." But they were okay with it.
Thank you very much, Doug. Let's give him a standing
Thanks,
ovation
everybody.
for his service. I'm going to give you this. I always get nervous around Protestants because some of them don't drink. Fortunately, he's of a sect that does. And so he won't mind. I tell people that I give this award to, or an award with a bottle of wine, that if you don't drink, it's a great piece of art that you can put on your bar there or wherever you have it. But the Napa Institute Award for Virtue in the Marketplace that we present to Doug, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are the serving the Lord Christ from Colossians 3:23. So in recognition of Doug's exemplifying the virtue of work and promoting the dignity of the worker through word and deed, by embodying the teachings of St. John Paul II, may the good works you have implemented in a beacon to others. Congratulations. Doug, this was really worked out well. Stephen Ford helped us on a lot of this, but I went off script a little bit, Stephen, so I don't know if you're out there someplace, but our next action is in Vino Veritas and Wine Truth, and that's going to be back, I believe, in Lenox, right? We're going to be back in Lenox, so you can gravitate back there. Thank you for participating in this event. Please give us your comments. Our next event will be next year in October. I think it's around the exact same dates, but obviously moved by one date and one day because of the calendar. But we want your comments on how we can improve what we're doing here. I think John Meyer and his team have done a great job tightening it up, and give them a round of applause. Thank you. So back to my grandson's ballroom, the Lenox Ballroom. So thank you. God bless all of you.